The only people left out completely are the people who are neither in education nor in employment, who actually lose their skills. And that is a very important lesson as well. If you don't invest in the skills of people, and if you don't give people a chance to use their skills, they actually end up worse than how they started. But again, it shows you how important the integration of education and work really is. And if I sum this up, basically, the development of skills really has to do with engaging employers in providing the right mix of skills. You can see this almost anywhere in the world, where employers are at the heart of skilled system, the economy works. But where this is entirely supply-driven system, you run into big trouble. Europe is a good example of this. It's about career guidance, and what I mean with career guidance is not the kind of things that, telling people which kind of job to choose. It's about telling young people the truth about the labor market prospects they have with different choices they make. Making sure that young people, maybe even people in primary school, get a sense of, where do they want to invest their effort? Why does it make a difference? And who does this best? People who have experience in the workplace. Almost the worst people to provide career guidance are people who have never experienced the kind of world of work themselves. But unfortunately, we see that often happening. It's preparing teachers well with industry experience. And people in industry that train us with strong pedagogical skills. It's that kind of mix that you really need to do that well. It's maximizing the use of workplace training. I come back to this again and again because it's the #1 predictor of high-level skills. The amount of time you actually spend at the workplace. And so on. I don't want to go through this in detail. I want to just briefly touch on the second pillar, which, it's not the subject of our discussions today, but it is an important dimension as well. How do we actually activate the skills of people in the economy? How do we figure out, who is inactive? Why are people not working? What are the barriers, the formal barriers, the informal barriers? How do we avoid brain drain? I don't mean, India is a fantastic supply of the world's skills, but, even within India, you have huge imbalances in the talent pool of people dealing with this. It is a very, very important way if you want to make effective use of your skills. I want to spend a bit more time on the last pillar. This is about finding the right skills balance. Matching demand and supply, avoiding skill mismatches that we find everywhere. And some of this is unavoidable. People complain, this is a problem of the education system, but some skill mismatches are unavoidable in an evolving economy like India's. You don't want to live in a stable scenario. You want to move upwards, and that means there was always going to be gaps between what you have and what you need. But let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. One of the things that we found when we tested the skills is that actually the use of literacy skills is almost explaining all of the productivity differentials across countries now, or numeracy skills. Take whatever you like. It's not just the skills you have, it's how well the labor market, the economy, the industry extracts value from those skills. Now, that predicts basically most of the productivity differences that we see around the world. And many industries actually can do a lot better than this. Figuring out what skills people have, using them effectively is very important. Here you can see this in more detail. If you are in the green line, it means you have great skills and you have a job that uses great skills. No? This is what we call the high skills match situation. Everybody wants it because that's the only area where you really make money. And the good thing is you earn a lot of money at the beginning of your life and you keep growing. No? This is actually something good for you. If you are in the yellow line, it means, you have a job that is really demanding, but you don't really have quite the skills this job demands. You start out lower in your earnings, and why? Because your employer is not going to pay you for skills you don't have. That's very natural. But you keep growing, and that's the interesting part. Putting more demands on people than their skills is actually a good thing for employers and for workers themselves. If you have a skills surplus, means basically you are better skilled than what your job demands, you go south. No? That's actually not a good scenario. Why do I say this? Because if you think about public policy, we are usually doing best in protecting the kind of jobs that actually serve people least. Nobody wants to close a big factory for obvious reasons. But actually that's the kind of places where many people are trapped. They're actually skilled to do better things. So skills mismatch has real consequences for employment and earnings of people. So what are the drivers of this? What can we do about this? The first thing you can do is providing better information about the skills that are needed and that are available. Real information about this. We have measured two things here. On the left side of the chart, you see the qualifications overqualification, underqualification. And you look at Sweden, the country at the top, no? You have about 20% of people who have better qualifications than what they need for their job. And now you think, well, what a waste of money. Did we invest in 2 great skills? No, look at the right side of the chart. You can actually see is less than 5% of Swedes who are actually better skilled than what they need for their job. Tells you 2 things. Employers are actually very, very good in recognizing the skills that people have and use them well. But our qualification systems are not very well adapted to this. No? They're not good signaling systems for the skills we actually have. Qualification mismatch and skills mismatch are totally different stories. You can see from this chart. In most countries, not in all. Some are doing that quite well. But we need to get a better picture of the skills that are needed and that are available. Helping young people to gain a foothold, crucially important. You saw that early. Now, if we don't build the foundations early on, those people are going to be a lost generation. Making skills more transparent. No? If you have great skills and nobody knows about it, then, well, it's not of good use for you and not of good use for employer and no one. But that is actually a big problem, even in many companies today, no? That we do not really recognize the skills that people have in a very well. And that's something which is hard to do, but there are good ways to do it. Helping employers to make better use of their employee skills. This is one of the most interesting findings, you know. When you saw early on, Japan did best in the skills people have. But when you look actually how well does the Japanese economy use the skills, Japan is worst, particularly when it comes to problem-solving skills. So people have great skills, but the economy doesn't draw value out of it. You look at the United States. I showed you at the beginning, we all overestimate the skills in the United States. Actually, if you test the skills of American workers, they're not very good. But American employers are better than anyone else in extracting value from the skills. So it's the 2 things that matter. No? If you're at Japan, you know, you have a really talented population, but the economy is not good at using it. In the United States, the economy runs at full speed, but actually skilled supply is limiting this. And this is why many Indians go to the United States to work there. No? That's where you turn skills into money. No? But the use of skills is crucially important. That's obviously where employers are doing important part. Creating more high-value added jobs, a lot of things happening in India on this. And finally, entrepreneurship. And the data that we have on this are not very good. You know, young people are generally very entrepreneurial, willing to take on new risks, doing new things, but the older we become, somehow the more cautious we get about this thing. There's something going wrong here. So let me sort of summarize this in a nutshell. What can we do about this? Initial education and training obviously is the foundation. And again, think about work-based learning, not as something separate from the initial education system, but as an integral part. We need to get away from this dichotomy between academic and vocational education. It's about integrating this, making sure that we invest in the right skills, making learning everybody's business, finding good ways how to share the costs and benefits, making sure that there are effective links between education and work. You saw this in this very powerful data, that there are lots of things you learn best at the workplace, and where we combine education and work, we draw the biggest benefits for individuals and societies. Allowing workers to adapt their learning to their lives. Not squeezing people into certain institutions, by making sure that people can decide when they learn, where they learn. Think about India's economy. Now, you can deal with the education system very well with the young people. That's working now quite well. But what do you do with the total workforce? People who have not got the kind of degrees and qualification. How do you make sure that they have chances to invest in their skills? And that's true in many, many countries in the world. Improving transparency. And I'm very impressed by the Indian work now on the skills sector councils. I think this is exactly the kind of mechanisms that you need to actually make sure that there are ways to recognize, certify real skills of people. Providing guidance, telling people the truth, telling people what the prospects are, the returns to skill investments are, helping employers to make good use out of their skills. And I think an organization like FICCI is the best place to do that, giving the kind of format in which employers can do those kinds of things, helping economies move up the value chain, and so on. Those are the kind of things that matter. So it's about developing the right skills, activating them, and at the end of the day, making sure that we have the right mix between the skills that are needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schleicher, for providing those deep insights into the imperatives for skill development in any country and providing a real overview of what's happening around the world. With this, we come to the keynote address. And may I now invite Mr. Mohan Das Pai, Chairman, Manipal Global Education Services Private Limited, for the keynote address.
My presentation is here. Let's see. It is on, ma'am, but display इसका चला गया है. You speak with the presentation. Just try. Okay, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are at a very interesting state in our economic progress, and as we talk about skills and growth, and the focus on growth and development, we need to reevaluate where we are. We are a big country. So we need to understand that we can't compare with the Netherlands, Finland, and Norway, or Singapore. We are a big country. The only country we can compare with is China. Because China has gone through the similar process. It has the same historical background. In 1978, China was just behind us at about $150 billion in GDP. And today they are 10 trillion. And today we are 2.23 trillion. They've grown at 9.9% a year from 1978 till 2015, and we have grown at 6.7% a year from 1991 when we opened up till 2015. They've grown at an average of 3% per year more than us, and for a very important reason. Women make up possibly about 45% total workforce. Workforce participation by women in China is something like 80-85%, whereas in India is 24%. And when Mao took power in 1949, he said, women hold up half of heaven. So there was equality between genders, and that is what has made China's growth so very tremendous. And I think we need to understand that very well when we come out of the strategy. We are about $2.23 trillion in GDP. Our PPP, Purchasing Power Parity GDP value, is about 6.7 trillion. So we are the third largest economy in the world. We are the third largest economy in the world, and we've got to keep it in mind when we look at our strategy and see what we ought to do. We cannot keep away from the rest of the world. 50% of our GDP is impacted by imports. Our exports could be about $450 billion. Imports are $450 billion. Exports are $325. And then we also have a service export of something like about $170 billion. And overall, it is about 55% of GDP. So we're closely interlinked with the world. We have a revenue challenge in this country. Of all the money that we get in India, 27% goes to pay interest. So we have a deep challenge. So we don't have enough money. We are a capital short, labor surplus country. And this is what we ought to do when we talk about our strategy. And if you look forward for the next maybe 20 years, we'll find that by 2025, the population, the age group of 15 to 64, which is the productive part of India, will be the largest in the world. 2 years ago in China, the working age population peaked at 650 million. From 650 million is now coming down. So wages are going up in China. Wages are almost doubled in China in the last maybe 3 to 4 years. Whereas our working age population, I think, is about 495 million. We'll go to 650 million sometime maybe in the next 10, 15 years. And this is very critical for us because if the percentage of young people in the population goes up, we have a deep challenge how to create jobs for them all over this country. And this is extremely critical because this generation of people are very, very different compared to the earlier generation. Is coming now? Okay. This chart is an important chart. No input. Okay. China's GDP today is 10 trillion. We are 2.23 trillion. But 10 years ago, China's GDP was around $3 trillion. 10 years ago. What does it mean? It means that as the fastest growing economy in the world, in the next 10 years, we will see a huge surge in growth. And this surge in growth can only come in case we are able to get our skill issues sorted out, in case we are able to create jobs for young people, and in case we are going to grow. So if you look at this chart, this is an important chart. This is an extremely important chart because there is great hope for this country. China's growth is now coming down, it's shaking up the world. China has become the factory of the world, but we could be what China is today in 10 years' time. And this is exactly the opportunity that awaits us if we all come together. Look at education profile. I think it's pathetic, just pathetic. Only 9% of our young people, our working age people in the age group of 15 to 59 have a college degree or have a certificate. Of course, to take a degree, you have to be 21 years, so we could discount some part of it. It just means that we have not invested enough in human resources in this country ever since we got freedom. Our literacy rate is 74%, China is 95% plus. We have IITs, we have bad schools. So we have to invest more and more into developing our people's skills in the next 10 years to become much more productive. And let's remember one thing. There's only two things that make a difference between a rich country and a poor country: labor productivity, capital productivity. Our labor productivity is poor. So we have to improve labor productivity. There was a study made by McKinsey 20 years ago to find out the difference between the United States and Japan in terms of capital productivity and labor productivity, and they came to the conclusion that capital productivity in the United States is pretty high, around 13%, whereas Japan is only 4 to 5%, but labor productivity in Japan was higher. And Japanese were able to become richer because the labor productivity was much higher than the United States. So we have to be very focused on what we do. Skills is about jobs, and jobs are about skills. You cannot skill and not create jobs. So that's why I think we've got to be very careful about that. And for the economy to grow at 7 to 9%, which you're targeting, we have to skill our people, and they have to be productive. What is the difference between a person who is able to do X amount of work and a person who is able to do Y amount of work? The difference is a person who is more productive, produce more, can get paid more. Please remember, 150 years ago, the steam engine was invented. When the steam engine was invented, the world got disrupted. Till the advent of the steam engine, India and China by 1820 were the largest economies in the world. We are dependent upon artisans and muscle power. Once the steam engine came, it meant that human productivity went up and you could produce much more and people could be paid much more, and Europe became richer and Great Britain ruled the world. So we got to understand this very clearly. Now, in India, there are more people than available jobs at lower skills level, and there are more jobs than available people at the higher skills level. Now, this is a conundrum that we have to solve. It basically means that the lower level, where jobs are, maybe more, there are more people coming in. That's why if you want a government job, you get millions of people applying. Okay, but they may not have the skills, but they do. But if you have a job in the high-tech industry, you have a job in sophisticated industry, we don't have enough people. So when you do a skill development, we need to focus on that. And then we need to map the skills and the jobs that are coming all over the country. And I think this is very, very, very important for us. For example, if you look at the entire country, and we are not one single country, we are a collection of countries. We are like Europe, but we behave as if we are one single country. We are like Europe, but we behave like a France. We want to control everything from Delhi, and it can't work because this country is just too big. So if you map all the skills that are required in all of the country, map all the industries that are coming up all of the country, you find a big gap. It's extremely give back. If you take Pune, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and maybe Delhi as a high-tech industry, sophisticated industry, mechanized industry, automated industry, 3D printing, robotics, avionics, aeronauticals, everything is coming up. But where are the skilled people? And if you look at other parts of the country, the eastern part and the central part, UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and maybe Bihar, where the majority of the Indian population stays, there are no jobs which require high skills. There are no jobs which require low skills. There are no jobs at all coming up in this area. 1 in 2 youngsters in UP is unemployed, maybe unemployable. So you have a situation where there's a huge labor surplus in one area. In the south, there is a labor deficit. And that's why you see migration. And we've got to map this. 20% of the workforce in Kerala comes from Bihar. And my friend who's a Malayali told me, in Kerala, if you don't know Hindi, you cannot get by. Because all the chai wallas, chai shops are all run by the Biharis. The skills are by the Biharis in the hospitality industry. So there's a challenge that's happening. There's a migration happening all over this country, and this is what we got to look at when you look at the skill mapping. Look at this. I think this is an important thing, and this is a solution to our challenges. 18% of GDP is agriculture, and agriculture has 52% of the Indian's population depend on 18% of GDP growing at 3%. That means 48% of a population depends on 82% of a GDP growing at 10%, because 3 and 10, the average could be 7 to 8. Now, the agrarian crisis that we have in this country, farmers committing suicide. Didaji, in my state, Karnataka, 175 farmers committed suicide last month. And in Maharashtra, 2 days ago, a woman farmer burnt herself because she had 5 children and no food. Such great tragedies are happening. The agrarian crisis is not a crisis of agriculture, it's a crisis of jobs. Because land cannot afford 600 million people. The land cannot afford 600 million people. We have to move 300 million people off the land into factories in the next 10, 12 years unless we are able to face this crisis, the great crisis. And there's great anger and frustration in India, and this is going to hurt us, the country, socially. And look at this chart. China has been successful. In China, industry makes up 40% of GDP, whereas in India, agriculture is 18%. So we got to grow at GDP. We got to focus on industry. We got to have labor-intensive industry. We got to move people from the land. We still will produce enough. China, with 30% of its population on land, produces 2 times the food grains we produce. And America, with 1% of its population, produces more than food grains than we do. So we don't require so many people on land. And of 52%, 16% own land. The balance are landless labor, are doing some petty jobs. And they're underemployed, unemployed. And that's the biggest tragedy that's happening in this country. And we're unable to understand why. For the last 10 years, people in agriculture in India came down from 60% to 52%. So we had to accelerate. We need a land acquisition bill. We have to move these people. And unless we do that, this tragedy of farmers committing suicide is going to continue. So we have to follow the China model. And China has moved 300 million people over the last 20 years. By the urbanization. China is 51% urban, we are 34% urban. The world is 50% urban, we are still 34% urban. We don't like urbanization. We want to tell people, stay in your villages. Villages are cesspool of communalism. Ambedkar said that in the 1930s. So we have to have a strategy of urbanization. We have a strategy of, creating growth centers all over, especially in the middle of India, where the need is the highest. The challenges are huge. And we got to create a people, skill of people for a global role. We have in the Middle East, we have in Southeast Asia, everywhere, there's a great need for people with skills. And you'll be very surprised in Italy, in the Palma region, the Sikh farmers have become dairy farmers. They resurrected an industry, the dairy farming industry in Italy. All over Europe, farmers, nobody wants to be a farmer. We can export farmers. The whole of Siberia, Ukraine, where there's trouble, unfortunately, farming is a big industry and there are no farmers. So we got to see where the world is short, and we got to work with various countries to send people and skill them to meet the global demand. Because by 2050, we'll be the youngest country in the world, the labor surplus country. Even China won't have labor surplus, because China could become poorer before it becomes richer. China had a one-child policy by 1978, and the one-child policy means that 2 children are going to support maybe 8 people or 6 people in their lifetime. And that's a big challenge. Inverted pyramid. We got a right pyramid. China's pyramid is inverted. And so we have to create skills for the world. And then we have 24 million young people coming into the workforce. The data is wrong. It's not 2.4, it's 24, because big numbers scares us. We can't even put the numbers down. 24 million people come in the workforce because 20 years back we produced 25 million babies. 1 million babies died in India out of every year because of child mortality. So 24 come into the workforce every year. Out of which 30%, 25% may not want jobs, get married. 75% want jobs. 18 million jobs have to be created. 18 million jobs is almost equal to the population of Australia. We need jobs to be created for these people. Second, we have to mix and match the kind of skills and jobs that are needed. So we have this program called Make in India. Make in India is a fabulous program, but Make in India to succeed, we'll have to look at labor-intensive industries. We're having Make in India in manufacturing, a time when manufacturing is becoming automated. The assembly lines for automobile plants are automated. We have robots doing work. In China, they're building millions of robots. They don't have enough labor. They're building millions of robots. So robots are going to take over in the next 10 years. Work is going to get automated. If Make in India has to succeed, we have to orient towards labor-intensive industries while the need for labor is still required. So we have to have labor reforms, good infrastructure, investment in R&D, blah, blah, blah. Then, what should industry do? These are some of the things that we need now. We need a better apprenticeship program. You know, at Infosys, we got a group of 50 applications in Maharashtra from a person to train them in software. They were all 12th standard fail. And we said, we train 30,000 people a year. And we spend 1,200 crores training them. And we can't train them in software. They filed a criminal case against us, which is still in the court. Criminal case. Because they didn't listen to us. And we used to hire 30,000 people a year and train them and spend 1,200 crores. 1,200 crores is more than the total IIT budget those years. So we got to make the apprentice program available to everybody. And skilled people, industry should say, anybody who comes with a certificate, we're going to pay 20% more. Why will the person go get a certificate if he doesn't get more money? Because if you get a skill, it means he's more productive. So compared to somebody without a skill, you've got to pay more. So I think FICCI and industry should join together and say, you come with a skill, you pay 20% more. And our industrial policy should change. We are capital short, labor surplus, but we incentivize capital. And many people borrow from the banks, don't pay and become very rich. And we don't have jobs. And they put automatic machines. And we lose our tax revenues. 97,000 crores of tax subsidies goes to people in industry, out of it 35,000 goes for capital investment. We don't have a single clause to incentivize labor, to create jobs. You go to Europe. In Europe, you go to a country and say, I'm going to hire 1,000 people. The Prime Minister will come and meet you, shake hands with you, giving a training grant of a couple of $1 million. Am I right, Andreas? Because they want jobs. Because people vote, machines don't vote. And they're concerned about the constitution. They're concerned about jobs. Here you come and say, I'm going to produce 20,000 jobs. They say, Jan, what is that? I'm serious. I'm serious about that. So we got to focus on labor, not capital. We need people who are going to employ people. We need a tax break for labor, Didaji, 3 times a company's contribution to Provident Fund in ESI because it's got to be accounted, up to 50,000 rupees per new job for 1 year. It's a very small thing, but we can easily do that because incentivize the creation of jobs. If you incentivize the creation of jobs, the medium, small-scale industry will come up. They create the most jobs. But MSMEs pay 14% interest. They don't get paid by the big industry. They don't have skilled people. They don't have capital, and they create jobs. And we have a policy for industry to give industrial development based upon capital. And, we got to change the entire structure. Then, we got to make sure that with higher skills, we become much more competitive. The Prime Minister heard a industrial meet, Didaji, with all of you to talk about what India can do because of China's slowdown. India has to become more competitive. To become more competitive, you have to increase the productivity of labor. Steel costs 1.4 times what it costs in the rest of the world to produce. We've got to bring down the cost. Our supply chain costs have to come down. Competition has to go down. Friction to business has to reduce. Velocity of business has to go up. And skills have to go up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pai, for that very, very inspirational and visionary talk. We do have down the day, sessions on Make in India, Digital India, entrepreneurship, and I think we will take a piece out of the talk which Mr. Pai gave and have the deliberations around his vision. We have now another very inspirational person who is going to give the talk, Dr. Kamal Hassan. May I invite you for your inaugural speech?
Good morning. I salute my co-warriors in the battle ahead. It's a great dream. FICCI itself was a dream by that man in the photograph there. He dared to dream, and I was telling my friend Mr. Pai that he dared to dream, we slept. Now, rapid eye movement has started. Hopefully, we'll dream again. But we're only dreaming. We got to move forward, and the battle is ahead. And to understand the wisdom of Mr. Pai's rapid fire keynote, I think I'll have to experience more problems while I try to implement some of my dreams in the skill set development area. They're already doyens in the field of developing skills and educating. The Media and Entertainment Skills Council has a mandate to train 11.24 lakh skilled manpower. That is 1.1 million something. I still count in lakhs. So MESC did a skill gap analysis and came up with 74 job roles across various subsectors of media and entertainment. Media and entertainment is usually looked upon as cinema and maybe television, and that's it. But we realized with pride and with anger that we are a bigger industry than what we assumed we are. And the parallels that we have could only be compared to IT, probably even more. And I might sound like I'm bragging now because we have not put our energy to good use. So we don't know the actual power of this industry. We have affiliated 100 training centers and have already enrolled 5,000 students pan-India. We are trying to bring digital convergence across all subsectors of the media and entertainment. Now, Didar Saab was talking about industries investing into skill set development. I wish they do, but that's not the case with the film industry. They are negotiating with existing skills and complaining that they are too costly, but they have done nothing about developing the skill and creating more skilled laborers, which they need, direly need. They're paying more for what they think is less skilled workers. So there is this discontent, and suddenly out of the blue, the Federation of Film Employees got together, and they are going to organize, along with the media and entertainment skill sector, a massive program of certification for those who are already at work in the field and also newer skills. I mean, we have a rough list of what are the sectors we have in mind. We're talking about assistant directors, camera assistants, music assistants, writers, editors, art directors, assistants, audio, makeup, costumer, dancer, stunt, dubbing, lightman, still photography, skilled artists and actors. Last but not the least, because some of the actors take the major chunk of the meat when it comes to payment, I being one of them. But what we are trying to do, with the help of the Union of All India Federation, is to create this big workshop. We are already on the move towards certification. And it's a massive program. We are breathless with excitement and the slope that we have to climb. We are aware of it. We'll come back again to FICCI for as much help as they can give. And we would go to the Chief Minister of the state and also the Prime Minister and ask for their encouragement in an endeavor which is actually beyond us. And it's not done by the industry bosses, but by the workers. And that's something which, though it seems to lean to the left, I can assure you that they are right in the middle as far as logic goes. They're looking for better jobs, better pay, and also improving their life, and they have invested in it, which is a rare phenomena. I don't know whether it will happen in any other industry except the film industry. That warms my heart, and we have set a date. We are not talking about it. We have set it a little too close for our comfort, but it is November, and what we are planning to do is request the industry to shut down for those 3 days, come in and participate in this massive program. And it's not a big show. It's just the inaugural of something which has to continue happening. We'll come to all the industries, and we are also thinking of inter-industry relationship as far as skill development is concerned. Especially we require it. We are a very versatile medium, and we can make use of my bricklaying friend Parshuram, the jewelry makers, all those guys with medals here could become part of the film industry, at least training them. And that's how versatile the film industry is. 3D modeling, and we can use it. And probably soon nanotechnology, I don't know. But that's what we are looking at. And we are glad. I'm not here to talk about statistics and what is to be done. We know what is to be done to our industry. We are already doing it. We came here to announce that. Somebody announced that I'm an inspirational speaker. That's not true. I'm inspired by my union and my people and the workers' might. And I'm impressed. I came here to voice our first step towards this. Hopefully next time I would be here to tell you about our first success story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kamalji. May I confirm to you that your initiative, where you've correctly pointed out, it's not an industry-led initiative, but a worker-led initiative. Now, that is a great example of how skill can go the other way around, and that they inspire you. And so you have become the inspirational speaker and the inspirational behind this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kamal Hassan, and I do hope that the other sector skill councils will also take a leaf out of this announcement and make such announcements more often. I just wanted to, before I invite Mr. Sanjeev Duggal for the concluding remarks, 2 announcements. FICCI has been working very closely with NSDC in several initiatives. One of the initiatives is that we are carrying out a survey to estimate the private sector capacity for skill development and training. A 2-page survey questionnaire is there in your kit bag. So do kindly fill it up and submit it either at the FICCI registration desk or there is a NSDC stall. So please do it. It will be really helpful in making certain policy decisions. And there is also a feedback form which is there in your kit bag. Do also fill that in. With this, Mr. Duggal, may I request you for the concluding remarks?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been sort of sitting on this dais for, the Skill Summit's opening ceremonies, I think, for 5 years now. And I must say that in my personal experience, this has been the most insightful opening session ever. Yes. Let me try to capture that for the audience very quickly, right? I think Mr. Didar, I'm trying to do this for all of you so that you have a quick summary as an insight to walk away from the session. Yeah. I think very important points got made in my view here. I think Mr. Didar Singh established the fact that skills is a horizontal industry and affects everything, which the last speaker, Dr. Kamal Hassan, also reiterated that even the film industry is a convergence of complete skills. I think the insight that you brought, Andrew, about health, participation in life, trust, is a completely new angle to skills. Most people have not seen skills as adding to the quality of life beyond the economic aspect of it. And I think that's a very significant learning today. I think also the fact that particularly in the Indian market that the routine cognitive skills demand is dropping is very critical for people to understand, because that's where the entire education system is focused I think the fact that literacy, numeracy, and the soft skills around working in teams and working at workplaces is very significant part of teaching anything. So it's not just about teaching somebody the skills of an electrician or a carpenter or an animator, but the skills of numeracy, the skills of literacy, the ability to read, and the ability to work with other people. I think that's also a very insightful thing in terms of content. I think Mr. Pai brought out very quickly very powerful points, I thought. And I've been saying this in many forums, and he said it in his beginning, that if we have to look at benchmarks, we have to look at large countries like China. And too often in skills forums, I don't mean to belittle anything, but we are all the time looking at models of, say, Switzerland or France or Germany, where the social context is different and the size and scale is so different. I think the fact that 57% of the educated in India are not adequately skilled for employment is something to worry about. Also the fact that since India is not one country, the skill maps will vary from states to state. And completely different skills will work in different states to create fulfillment. The need to shift from agriculture to industry is so critical. And I think the whole conversation around incentivizing labor and job creation is so significant. I still remember that even when we are talking to the ministry sometimes, there are schemes where the discussion is about investing in infrastructure and capex. And all of us have said, that's not a challenge. The challenge is about incentivizing the OPEX part of it, the labor generation part of it. And also how specific gaps in the world can be filled by Indian industry. I think, in a nutshell, these were some of the big learnings that I'm taking away from this session, and I'm just summarizing for the audience. I'd like to therefore formally on behalf of FICCI thank you, Mr. Mohandas Pai, for setting forth the agenda of this keynote address. I would also like to thank Mr. Andreas Schleicher, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, who's the director of the Directorate of Education and Skills OECD, for his insights. Dr. Kamal Hassan, who's the chairman of the Media and Entertainment Sector Council. Dilip for all the work he does with all of us in this special. I thought he was going to address the gathering, but I think it changed last minute. Yeah. And finally, I'd like to thank Dr. Didar Singh, who's the Secretary General of FICCI, Mr. RCM Reddy, Chairman of the FICCI Skills Development Council, Shobha and her team, who I know have done a lot of work to put this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dugal. One last announcement. FICCI had come up with the skill pledge. I think one of the first chambers to sign up skill pledge, and we've been doing it over the years. But to reinstate our commitment towards skill development, I would request all of you to please sign up the skill pledge, which is right there outside in the pre-conference area. And as we move out, I would request the dignitaries on the dais to begin with signing up. Dr. Kamal Hassan and others, if you can sign the skill pledge, which is there in the pre-conference area. And down the day, we do have several dignitaries that will be coming in. We have Minister Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, who will be joining us at 2, and there are several secretaries, the former skill secretaries, Mr. Sunil Arora, Mr. Rohit Nandan, the new skill secretary, as well as the MSME secretary, Mr. Anup Pujari. They will be all joining us in various sessions. So do attend all the sessions. With this, we come to the end of the opening session, and we now break for tea, and we'll reassemble in this very room at 12 noon. Please give a big round of applause to the dignitaries.